So you guys, I am so excited to be here. Trademarks are kind of my jam. We're going to get into why my law firm focuses on trademarks in a bit. But first, I wanted to explain to you guys that I do have a very special guest that I'm going to be bringing on to help me. Because as you guys know, trademarks aren't super fun to talk about. And you might even be like, oh my gosh, now a lawyer's talking. Like, we had so many great experts. We had so many amazing people, bring in their amazing advice for you on BeLive. And now we have this boring lawyer talking about this boring topic. And you guys, this is not boring, but I do understand that sometimes just because of what I do, I talk about things at like a level that someone has to bring me down to. So I wanted to bring somebody on that would really make sure that I'm talking about this in a way that is kind of meeting you where you're at. And I was like, okay, what better person could I bring than somebody who I have brought in myself, who is a part of my team, who has gone from not knowing anything about trademarks to being like my right-hand person who's helping my clients with all of their trademark questions and doing a lot of the work as well. And that person is Caitlin Allen. Are we able to bring her in? There she is. Hi, Caitlin.
Hey. It says that I'm joining right now. Hi.
So I've got some people saying that I make it fun and I'm never boring. You guys, I try. But I know this stuff can be kind of complicated. And so, Caitlin, I'm so excited that you're here.
Oh, thanks.
And Caitlin and I are going to go over the 4 biggest mistakes that we see business owners making when it comes to trademarks specifically. Now, you might be like, Joey, what in the heck is a trademark? So a trademark is really just anything that when you see it, you think of one brand in particular. So for a lot of you, it's your business name. It might be a slogan or a logo or a catchphrase, or maybe like your podcast title, or if you're using BeLive like I do and you have a signature weekly talk or a signature series that you do, almost like a podcast, but on live streaming, that can also be a trademark. And Caitlin and I are always seeing business owners make mistakes here. And if you're not careful, this stuff can really come back to bite you. So the first mistake that we see people make all the time is they're missing what's in front of you. And here's what I mean by that. A lot of people come to us saying, Joey, I need a trademark. Caitlin, how often do you hear people in Facebook groups being like, do I need to get my name trademarked?
Yeah, they don't fully understand what that means, or they're like, I think I need a trademark and an LLC. I'm not 100% sure though.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of like misunderstanding about all of this. And okay, we're seeing some people say, I need to trademark my program name. Oh yeah, Madeline, we need to talk because you're like rocking it and you definitely need to protect that. And so, but that's exactly what we're talking about. I need to trademark my program name. So as Caitlin and I found out pretty quickly, people are really misunderstanding exactly how this happens. And we talk about, I need to trademark my name in kind of common law and common like business language. But when we talk about it that way, we're not really helping ourselves understand what happens. So I don't think Caitlin even knows this, but I was a kid, I was super into magic. Yeah. And so what if you guys, like, what if I could do this magic trick and just like give all of you guys trademarks? Like Oprah style, like you get a trademark and you get a trademark and you get a trademark. The reality is that I can pull off that trick. And something that Caitlin and I do a lot is we educate our clients on letting them understand that even before you trademark anything, you automatically have trademark rights. So that's mistake number 1, is that you're missing what's in front of you. You're missing that according to the way that laws are set up here in the US, just by using a business name or a logo or a slogan or the name of your program, you automatically have trademark rights. The problem is that those automatic rights that you have just by using it are super weak. And so really the reason why we come in when people say, I want to trademark my whatever, what people are really talking about is I need some way to protect the trademarks that I have in place. And that means that you need a registration.
And that's where we come in.
That's where we come in. So mistake number 2 is that you don't have a registration. So I like to talk about it in terms of a house versus a fence. So when it comes to trademarks, like we said, just by being in business, just by using those different brand elements, you have the house, you have the trademark, but you don't have a fence. You don't have a registration. And if you guys have seen that circle R symbol, that's what we're talking about here. So Caitlin, can you talk a little bit about kind of the benefits of a trademark registration and why it's helpful to get the registration versus just having those automatic rights versus not having anything?
Well, first off, it's a really cool piece of paper.
Isn't it cool?
You get a registration with Indie Law. You even get a lapel. Is that how you say it? Lapel?
A lapel pin. Yeah.
A lapel pin. So that's why you should work with Indie Law. No. But the main reason to have a registration is so that you have proof of first use, especially when somebody comes to you and says, hey guys, hey, I'm using this name, you're using this name, you need to stop. Well, I'm sorry, but I had first use of this name and here's my certificate to prove it. Another thing is people getting on the bandwagon of grabbing random domain names and random social media names, or trying to shut down your social media if you have a specific name. If you have that certificate in hand, you can prove to, say, Etsy or Facebook or Instagram that you have the proper protections in place so that your name can't be taken.
Right. Absolutely. So like Caitlin was saying, it really allows you to have that strong evidence that you don't have if you don't have the registration. So a trademark registration certificate is almost like a birth certificate, but for your brand. Like you guys are all obviously born and you can tell us when your birthday was. But if we pushed back, if we were like an airport and we were like, no, we need proof of when you were born, you would have to supply that proof. And so with the way that our laws are set up, that trademark registration allows you to have that proof so that if someone ever tries to boss you around, you can say, no, I own this. Or if you have to enforce your own rights and say, hey, you're copying me and I need you to stop, and here's proof of me actually owning it, you have that in place. The other very important thing about trademarks is that when we talked about those weak automatic rights versus these more powerful registration rights, only with a trademark registration do you get national protections for your brand. So one of the things that make it weak automatically is that you only have exclusive rights to your brand in your region, so even smaller than your state. But if you get that registered trademark, then you own your brand across the entire country. And BeLive is such a good example of the fact that we are all now running these online businesses. And so having exclusive rights just to your region isn't very helpful anymore. And so you want to make sure that as much as possible, you're calling nationwide dibs to the different brand elements that you're using. So I want to pause right there and just see what's going on in the comments. Never thought about trademarking my show name. Yeah. And so one of the things that I think you guys are starting to think about here is that sometimes we think about trademarks as like, eventually, maybe one day I'll do it. And it's kind of this legitimate looking thing that is optional, but like cool brands have it and big brands have it. And that's not a very helpful way to think about it as a business owner, because until you secure your own trademarks, you might be infringing on somebody else's. And when it is, the example of trademarking a show name is a really good example of that in action. So the way that I see it is like, people are saying, should I trademark my show name or shouldn't I? Well, it's kind of like you're riding a bike and should you wear a helmet or not? So you riding the bike is you actually using it as a trademark. And then should you have a helmet or not is like, should I get the registration or not? Well, if you're riding your bike, you should probably have a helmet. And if you are naming your show, that's functioning as a trademark. And so if you're not protecting it, you're just setting yourself up to run into some type of an issue down the road. And so it's important to think about that so that when you're naming your show or your business name or your slogan, you're doing a proper trademark search to make sure that you're not accidentally infringing anybody else. And that's mistake number 3.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think another random thing right there is a lot of people assume that trademarks are related to like a physical product. Like you have to show branding on a physical product versus your show or your podcast or something like that. So maybe we could speak a little bit about that too.
Yeah. So when it comes to podcasts, and that's a good example, and this also fits nicely into this third mistake that we're about to talk about, which is that you're not looking before you leap. You're not thinking about trademarks before you commit to a name. And let's use this big example right now because it's trending in the news of Entrepreneur Magazine. So Entrepreneur Magazine owns Entrepreneur Magazine, and they have Entrepreneur registered as a trademark for their magazine. But the trademark office takes everything you could possibly sell and it divides it into 45 different classes. And so the class that Entrepreneur Magazine has the magazine in is in a class that podcasts also fit in, and a Facebook Live show would also fit in. And so because of that, Entrepreneur is a trademark that's registered, that's in the space of magazines, podcasts, live shows, and they want to enforce their rights against anybody else. And so people who are trying to also apply for trademarks for their podcast, if they have the word entrepreneur in it, Entrepreneur Magazine is going after them, forcing them to withdraw their applications. And so this is what I mean, that you want to look before you leap. Even before you think about trademarking, when you're in that naming stage, you want to make sure that you're thinking about trademarks so that you're naming it in a way where you're not stepping on anybody else's toes. You can avoid those issues. And a lot of people don't think to run proper trademark searches. Let me know in the chats. I'm super curious. Have you ever gone to the trademark office's website to run a trademark search before? Because a lot of people, when they think about names, they go to GoDaddy, they run a domain name search. Maybe they check social media and see if the handle is available. More and more people are starting to use this free trademark database search. And it's free, but it is a little clunky. And so that being said, it's a great place to start just to make sure that the name that you are wanting to use isn't already taken. And Caitlin, because I know you guys, again, like I said earlier at the beginning of this episode of this larger show, when I first brought Caitlin in, I was like, dude, I just need help with like setting up my client folders. And Caitlin is like a VA rock star. And so she just kept showing like how much she was capable of and taking on more work and then starting to do client work. And so I've trained her like with the entire trademark process, and she helps my clients with this. But Caitlin, can you talk a little bit about how just running that search with the trademark database might not be as helpful as you think it is?
Oh my gosh. I remember the first time I even went to the USPTO website, and guys, if you haven't been, it can be so scary and so overwhelming. So definitely listen to Joey when he talks about how to run a trademark search, because it can be super difficult. So number one, when you run a search, you'll see things that may not even have gotten approved, but it's still listed there. So it could look like it's live when it's not technically. Another thing is marks that have been submitted but have a pending office action. If you don't know what an office action is and you don't know what that means, then you could say, oh, well, they're using this mark and they can get away with it, so maybe I can in a different class, but they might have a pending office action that you're not aware of. That's another thing that can be super overwhelming. And then also just being aware and cognizant of the different classes. Like you said with Entrepreneur Magazine, they have it in a certain class, but let's say you wanted to trademark the word entrepreneur in part of your phrase in a different class, that's totally acceptable. So if you're not aware of those as well, that can really throw you over if you see it in a different class.
Yeah, there are a lot of potential different just pitfalls that you might not be aware of. And that's what we want to try and do today, you guys, is just make you aware of certain things so that you don't take action and you're not even thinking about things that you don't know. The reality when it comes to trademarks, as you guys might know, one of the cool things about trademarks is that as long as you're in the US, you can apply for a US trademark on your own without hiring an attorney, which is pretty empowering for business owners. The problem with that, though, is that most people who apply without working with an attorney end up getting a rejection. So over 50% of trademarks who are applied for without an attorney end up getting refused. And one of the biggest reasons why a trademark gets refused is because of this thing called a likelihood of confusion refusal. What that means is the trademark office looks at your trademark application and says, hey, there's another trademark that's either pending or that's registered. And even though it's not the exact same as yours, it's similar enough that we're going to refuse your application. That type of a response is actually pretty common, and it blindsides so many business owners because they're not thinking about how broadly trademark rights can protect other businesses and brands. And so that's just another thing to think about as you're conducting your search before you even start your own application. I want to see how the comments are going. Corinder says, Caitlin Allen, where can we find you?
CaitlinAllen.com.
Nice. And Caitlin, you're on Instagram. Like that's like your favorite social media spot, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Alicia says, yes, I've gone to USPTO to check always. Now I have an attorney search for me. Love that.
Ross, is that how you say her name? Ask about, is it a worldwide thing or by country? So right now we're specifically talking about the USPTO, so applying for your trademark here in the United States.
Yeah, so trademarks are pretty interesting. You can technically apply for trademarks at the state level. Nobody really does that anymore. I don't really recommend it because you might as well just apply for it at the national level. There is no such thing as an international trademark or a global trademark. But what you can do is apply for your trademark in multiple countries. And there is an international treaty that the US is a part of that says if a trademark is registered in this country, then we're going to make it easier for you to have that same trademark be accepted and a part of our registered trademarks in these other countries. That is a pretty advanced, like ninja area of trademark law. But if you are conducting business internationally, that is absolutely something that I think that you would want to make a priority. And if you're not in the US, by the way, I would absolutely go to a trademark lawyer in your country because trademark laws are slightly different in every country. All right. So before we get into the last mistake, I just want to highlight something. And Caitlin knows this very well. We did some research because the reason, you guys, why we do trademarks right now is that when I started my law firm years ago, I was doing everything for business owners. I was helping them with their contracts. We were drafting terms of use and privacy policies. We were doing like independent contractor and employee documents for people. But over and over again, trademarks were coming up as this legal thing that was blindsiding business owners. They didn't know that they should be thinking about it. They thought that it was something that they could take care of later. And all of a sudden, something happened. And it wasn't just like one flat tire on their car. It was like all 4 tires got flat and their entire business was like brought to a halt because they received this cease and desist letter and they had to change their brand, or they received a infringement notice through Facebook that said that their entire site would get shut down unless they made some changes. And so because trademarks were this issue that people really weren't talking about, that was affecting so many kind of rising digital CEOs, rising business owners, we decided to focus on that. And what we found when we started doing our research was that about 20 years ago, 100 trademarks were registered in the US, about 100,000. And that was in 1998. Is that 20 years ago? 21 years ago?
21.
So that year, a little under 100 trademarks were registered. Last year, almost 500,000 trademarks were registered. So the number of registered trademarks is going up like crazy. You guys know that entrepreneurship is booming. And it's the writing is just kind of on the wall right now, where if you're not calling dibs on your trademarks proactively, because of so many people who are starting businesses and who are coming up with their own names for things, you're just having increasing chances that you're picking a name for something that somebody else has already started using. And so that's why running this search is super helpful. And it brings us to our fourth and final mistake that we see people making. And this is a big one, which is they wait to take action. They run a search. They see, okay, I'm kind of comfortable with the results. I think I'm okay. And then they decide, you know what, eventually I'll file for a trademark, but right now I think I'm fine. This happened to us a few times, but one, it was just really sad last year where a client came on board with us. We ran the search, everything looked okay. And then our process within our law firm is always to try and submit the application within 2 weeks or within a week after the search results are approved. But some things happened personally with this client, and it just took a while for us to get back on the same page with them. So about 2 months later, we were able to get a hold of them again, file for the application. But during that time, another business filed for a trademark. And because we ran our search when we did, we obviously didn't see that trademark that someone applied for in the future happened. And so it's very, very important when you're running these searches just to keep in mind that those searches that you run have an immediate expiration date. And that really is a snapshot in time. And as great and important of a step as it is, don't lose sense of your momentum and make sure that you're getting your own application submitted as quickly as you can. So checking into the comments, I've known that to happen with business names, similar names being shut down when they were in different states here. Yeah, this is becoming definitely a bigger issue in terms of so many people using names where it's harder to come up with a name, a trademark that's available. USPTO has an easy to use trademark search. That's true. They do have a search that is kind of easy to use. The problem is that it's hard to analyze those results. A lot of people run the search, and because they don't really understand how the trademark reviews and analyzes searches, a lot of people either they see things in the results that make them scared, that make them think that they might be infringing somebody else, when really those results aren't things that you should care about, or they're running a search for something and it doesn't pull up similar trademarks. And so when they file, they're told that it's being declined because of a similar trademark that they didn't even see when they ran a search. For instance, when you apply for a trademark, one of the things that the trademark considers is, are there any other trademarks that are kind of the same, but they're in a different language? So if you apply for something and somebody else owns that word or that phrase in a different language, that probably wouldn't show up in your search, but the trademark office would find it. All right, you guys. So we are going to stick around for as long as we can for the rest of this. Those were the 4 big mistakes. I'm going to go through those again, but I also just want to be mindful of responding to any of the questions that we're seeing. So Caitlin, I'll chat for a little bit and you can go through the comments and see. And if anybody wants to hop on live with us and ask a question or share an experience, we would love that as well. So BeLive says, do most trademarks get accepted? Most trademarks do not get accepted if somebody applies for them on their own. And you guys, I'm just being real here. Like, I understand that there are certain services like LegalZoom and others that exist. The problem with those cheaper alternatives to working with a lawyer is that currently with the technology, they're essentially just like form filling services. And so they have a form asking you certain questions and you answer them. They take the form responses and they submit an application. But because there's no strategy on the back end or calling out things that might either increase the chances of it getting accepted or increase the chances of you actually owning a trademark for what you offer and not something different, there's some strategy involved there. And the point of the trademark office, you guys believe it or not, is there are thousands of reviewing attorneys at the trademark office that review each and every application. And it is their job to find something wrong with your application. And as business owners who are trying to apply for trademarks, that is frustrating. But as businesses in general, that's pretty reassuring to hear, because it means that they're trying to do everything that they can to prevent others from really easily having words and phrases trademarked. Because the way that our society exists is there shouldn't be a monopoly on language. And so, you know, Apple, the computer company, they can own Apple as a trademark when they're talking about their company. But that doesn't mean that none of us can just kind of use Apple in a more generic term when we're talking about the fruit, because that would really kind of disrupt the way we're talking about things. And so hope that answers your question. In terms of working with a law firm, that usually improves the odds pretty drastically. But I will say this, and this is something that I try and tell my clients when we start working with them, is that when it comes to filing for trademarks, this is a very proactive area of the law. And it's not like getting an LLC where you just kind of do it, it's instantaneous and like you need it when you start. Ideally, people should be filing for trademarks as soon as they can in their business, just to have this protected, because as your brand becomes more valuable, as it would be harder to do a rebrand, then it can be more and more frustrating when you run into any issues down the road. That being said, when you apply for a trademark, and this is what I tell my clients, we're either going to get the result that we want or the lesson that we need. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, you know, we're working with you, we're crossing our fingers along with you that we can get that registration for you. But if there's some issue with a similar trademark that exists, or a bigger company that really kind of enforces their trademark against others that might not actually be that similar but are close, it's good to know that up front. Because if you're going to have to pivot and rebrand, it's better to do it in this more proactive space than when you're on the receiving end of a cease and desist letter or an infringement report here on Facebook or on Instagram or Etsy. So
the other flip side of getting that rejection letter as well is knowing that other people with similar names probably won't be able to get a trademark as well. If you're walking that fine line of you're not infringing on somebody else's mark, but you didn't get a registration. Right.
Yeah, no, it can be really nice just to play defense there, knowing that you're at a place where you've coined a phrase and you're owning it, and you're just making sure that others are respecting, you know, the value that you're providing. And really, when it comes to trademarks, we used Apple as an example. There's different types of trademarks that you can have when it comes to naming strategy. On the one end, you can try and claim something like Entrepreneur Magazine, like it's very descriptive or generic. But if it's more like Apple, you know, you're really using a word creatively. And if you're in that naming stage where you're naming maybe your Facebook Live, you know, BeLive show, or the entire name of your business or the name of a program, if you're currently naming something, remember that the more creative and distinctive your name is, kind of the further away it is from being just super descriptive of what it is that you do, the more powerful it is as a trademark. Because the point of a trademark really is for it to be like an empty vessel where over time the trademark is valuable because of the brand reputation that you built. So
I'm going to pop in with you guys for a second, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We have some questions about pricing. And I think for a lot of people watching, especially if they're new in business, they're just starting out, they're not sure even like how to go live or how to do any of this stuff. And then we're adding a trademark on top of it. They're like, I can't afford that. But I wanted to kind of talk about the alternative to that, right? Is that you do end up branding yourself. You do end up getting some notoriety. You do get all this stuff. And then somebody comes to you and says, and you have to start over.
Yeah.
Talk about the cost involved with that as well.
So I understand. I mean, I'm a business owner myself and I get it. It is an investment. And for people who are saying, can I afford this? Can you afford not to?
Can you afford a rebrand when you get a cease and desist letter?
And when we're talking about this, because this is such a good question, it's not just the money that goes into it. It's also your time and your mental energy.
The peace of mind.
These are those situations where when they happen, all those other things that are on your priority list, from your promotion to your own going live, to having all of these automated funnels that kind of use your own branding, all get pushed aside by this new issue that takes up all of your time. And it's so many, I just have so many businesses who they don't take care of this stuff. And even if at the end of the day, when your business is completely done 10, 20, whatever years from now, you might not have a trademark problem ever. But the longer you're in business, the more stressful it becomes that you haven't taken care of this yet. And so
it's kind of like that voice in the back of your head saying, there's something that you missed. There's something that you missed. And I think that this is really fascinating. And I think a lot of people are getting a lot of great value out of this, because this is not something that we talk a lot about in business. We talk about, especially during LiveCon, we've talked about how to go live and how to be consistent, how to make connections, what kind of lighting to use, what's your computer, like what kind of topics and all of this stuff.
Right.
This is really the back end business side of it. And if you're going to turn your love of live video and sharing your story and your mission with other people, you really need to be out there protecting the business end of it.
Yeah, and you're right. This is almost like the next level of kind of creating this brand. Like, it's beyond the tech. I tell people, when you're in business, you're evolving from maybe a hobby stage to that hustle stage to being in business. But there's a stage after being a business, which anybody can do. You have a business page on Facebook, you go to your bank, you get the certain paperwork. But to actually be a brand is a level beyond that. And in addition to the nightmare situations, having that circle R registration symbol, there's something to that as like a milestone where you've made it at that point.
Yeah, it's real then, right?
I've had a client who told me, because when they received the trademark certificate in the mail, they were like, this reminds me of like those brick and mortar stores who they take that first dollar and they tape it to their cash register.
Yes.
This is like that physical, tangible thing that's like, I made it as a business.
Sebastian is here. He was one of our speakers, our incredible speakers before. He wants to know if he can hop on for a minute. Sebastian, if you have that guest link that you were sent by BeLive, you can hop in the staging and I'll turn your mic on, okay?
Absolutely.
And Roz says, I haven't thought about doing a trademark as being that high on the list of importance. Now I can see that it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And in terms of the cost, because that's a good question. So you can move forward on your own. Just know that there's a risk there. You can also work one-to-one with an attorney. But because my law firm has narrowed in on this, we've also obviously seen that a lot of people, they can't really invest in one-to-one help. And it's such a foundational thing that we have created a course where you can go through it and avoid the mistakes that people tend to make on their own. So if you'd like to hear more about the course, feel free to message me, but that's not the point of this. I just want this to be helpful for you guys.
That's awesome. G. Samuel has a question. If your name is the name of your online show, would that need to be trademarked? So my name's Leslie Williams. Can I trademark my own name?
Anything can be trademarked. Yeah. Caitlin and I were laughing about this the other day. So yes, your name can be a trademark if you're using it as a trademark. If that's the name of your show, then it is a trademark. anything that when people see it or observe it can be a trademark.
Yeah, and actually, fun fact, just since I've been working with Joey, we had a client right at the beginning who had a curse word in one of her brand names, and the USPTO was not having it there for a long time, but they just started allowing vulgar words to be part of a mark. So kind of everything is trademarkable.
Yeah, well, you're right. Now vulgar words can be protected, but so can, and you guys will all find this interesting, so can sounds. So the MGM roar is a registered trademark. Tiffany Blue is a registered trademark. Reese's Orange is a registered trademark.
That one blew my mind.
Sebastian is here. He's going to pop in really quick and he's going to ask a question if that's cool with you guys. Absolutely. Go ahead, Sebastian.
Hey guys, first of all, absolutely amazing information. I don't know how many people you're really helping in this who have no idea how much risk they're at when they don't know this valuable information. So thank you so much on behalf of everybody out there who doesn't know what they're doing wrong or not doing at all. So I have a really quick question. So what if I have a business which is producing wines, and it is Best Wines Out There? That's the name, Best Wines Out There. And then somebody goes and writes a book, Best Wines Out There in America. Now, should I really be getting crazy about that? It's totally different business. I believe, unless I have an intention, or even if I don't, I personally believe that I shouldn't be infringing on somebody else's right to actually have a business that's entirely different than mine. I'm never going to jump into. Should I still be going and giving them a cease and desist? Or can somebody actually give me when it's entirely different industries? What do you think?
Great question. And thank you for the kind words. So here's what I'll say to that. And for those of you guys who might have missed the question, and I'll kind of generalize it here, but it's, when you see somebody who might be using a name or a trademark that you're wanting to protect, but it might not be super related to what you're doing, how much should you go after them if you're kind of okay, but you want to respect what you're doing? And there are a handful of things to keep in mind there. One is that you do have a responsibility as somebody who has trademark rights to enforce your rights against others, but just because another company is using something that's the same as yours doesn't necessarily mean that there's trademark infringement. It's only infringement if they are putting something out there that could be confusingly similar to your brand. So this kind of makes sense once you think about it, but like there's more than one big company out there called Dove. One's shampoo and one is chocolate. So as long as the two brands are different enough that when a customer sees one, they don't think that it's coming from this other source. Like they're not going down the chocolate aisle thinking that a company that also sells shampoo is selling chocolates now. I mean, maybe, but that's not very likely. So if it's not in the same industry, then you're probably okay. Also, keep in mind that not everything being used is necessarily a trademark. So in order for something to be a trademark, it really has to be kind of a brand-wide word, phrase, whatever it is. And the trademark, according to the trademark laws in the US, a book title is not a trademark in and of itself, because it's just the title of one work. So it would be a different story if it was like the title of a series of books, or if you were a thought leader and the title of your book was also the title of your signature course and the title of the speech that you give on stage. That could be a trademark. And then finally, a thing for you to consider is you might not necessarily want to send a cease and desist letter saying like, I want you to stop this, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to do anything. What you can do is send some type of a letter saying, hey, I see what you're doing. And like, by the way, like I'm totally cool with it, but I just want to make sure that in the future, you're not going to expand your business, change what you're doing to infringe on my rights. So would you please sign this contract, this agreement, saying that we're both in agreement that we're not going to step on each other's toes? And that can be a really nice cooperative, good cop way of getting what you want there.
And just for the record, that is a really good reason why you should work with an attorney, because if you come up and you see that after we run a search results letter that there is somebody who may have a trademark that could be confusingly similar, but you can actually say, hey, these aren't very similar businesses, your attorney can help you write up a contract to send to them that says, hey, can we coexist at the same time? That's another good reason to work with an attorney.
Yeah.
So Joey, I had a really quick question too, because that Dove example was really fascinating to me, because I was like, oh, the Dove shampoo and the Dove chocolate bar, right? Now, does the distinction there also lie within the visual aspect of it? Is a trademark visual as well, or is it just the word?
Oh my gosh, you guys are really good at asking questions. So
we're smart here. We're smart at BeLive.
It can. It depends on how you're applying for the trademark. So most people, especially our clients, if you're watching this show, then when you're thinking about trademarks, you're probably going to be applying for what are called word-only marks, meaning that that word or that phrase is the thing that you're wanting to protect. But there's also such thing as a stylized mark. So that could either just be like a logo that doesn't have any words on it, that's like your main logo that you're wanting to protect, or a combination of the logo with, the word or the phrase in a certain font in a certain color. And so you can apply for a trademark that, like, let's say that you have the logo and you have your business name and it's all like in a cute color and a cute font that you had your designer do for you. You could apply for one trademark application that protects all of that. And you might want to do that eventually. The problem is that if that's what you apply for, you are applying specifically for that. So somebody else, if they have a name that's slightly different and they apply for a words only mark, because you don't own the words only, but you own that specific styling, your rights aren't as broad as just owning the words only. So
I think the takeaway with that is that we need to have a lawyer do it.
It can get expensive. Yeah, we're seeing the distinctions here. And G. Samuel says LeBron James found out you can't trademark Taco Tuesday. That is such a fascinating example. And I won't get into it, but number one, it's super interesting. And you're right. He applied for a trademark for Taco Tuesday and it got denied. But what most people don't know is part of the reason why it got denied is because there's another company that owns Taco Tuesday.
Like a physical restaurant or something like that.
Oh, okay. You can't own Taco Tuesday. No, somebody already owns it.
That's fascinating. Well, this was so interesting. Joey, how does everybody get in touch with you? Because I think you have like 50 people ready to come and hire your firm right now, including me. So tell everybody where we can reach you and Caitlin.
Well, I'll put something in the comments just so you guys can follow me on Facebook if you'd like to. But the best way to get a hold of us, especially if you want a nice version of those 4 mistakes that we talked about, is just to go to indielaw.com. That's INDIELAW.com. And you can download our free resource that walks you through those 4 mistakes.
Awesome. And we have one more quick question from Alicia. A question about the book. Can a book title infringe on a complete brand?
That is a really good question, and it really depends on the situation.
So Alicia, reach out to indielaw.com, okay? Reach out. Alicia is Sebastian's co-host, so they were on the show the other day, and they were both absolutely fantastic. I want to thank you for spending all this time with us. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had some really difficult questions and we made you put your thinking caps on. You are actually our last guest for LiveCon 2019. And just really quickly, I was thinking about this the other day and I was thinking, how cool is it that lawyers use live video, right? Who knew?
You guys, we try and be cool like you.
Yes, and Joey hosts the show almost every Tuesday where he goes live to talk about trademark issues. So you should definitely follow Indie Law on Facebook.
Using
that
BeLive.
Is a great point. Yeah, that is a great point. Lawyers Gone Live. Is that trademarked? I'm gonna try to get it if it's not.
There's a great business idea there.
There's a great business idea. Joey, I'm going to contact you privately, okay?
Great.
Caitlin, look out, because we've got a whole new slew of stuff that we're all going to do together. Outstanding broadcast, says Sebastian and G. Samuel Barrett. Good stuff. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Everybody say goodbye to our favorite lawyers, Joey Vitale, and say goodbye to Caitlin Allen. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you all hopefully at indylaw.com. Thank you again.